What's up, everybody? Peter Exodus O'Coffer, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Top 10 Things in Music. So, everybody likes their top 10 lists, and I had one, and so I was deciding, I'm gonna go do another sub genre, sub whatever you want to call it. A new line, a track when it comes to music appreciation and music history. So this episode, I'm looking at the 10 most important albums in the rise of hip hop. So we're going to go from essentially like the mid 80s to the mid to late 90s. And these are, everybody's a hip hop artist here except Erykah Badu and Mary J. Blige. But, Mary J. Blige is the queen of hip hop soul. So you'll see why I stick Mary J. in here when I do. And, I've done an episode on Brandy and Erykah Badu. And Erykah, sits in all of the great African American music traditions, jazz, soul, blues, and hip hop. So you got it. I got to throw her debut album in here. But let's get started. So the first album, Kurtis Blow, Ego Trip, 1984, and this is really, forget when this was released, but remember, up until 84, hip hop was a singles driven, I think maybe even the folks who did Rapper's Delight, they did mostly singles. They may have had one or two albums. Even Grandmaster and the Flash and the Furious Five didn't have a lot of albums. And so, Kurtis started out with the Breaks, I believe, in 81 or 82. But it was his fourth album, so he did have other albums, but this was his biggest album. And he had his most successful one. Let me see. So 8 Million Stories was on this. AJ Scratch was on this album, and Basketball. And really, Kurtis Blow was the first rap artist to, consistently put out albums. And it took 4 for him to really put it all together and kind of have a smash. Now, 84 was a banner year because the Fat Boys, the Run DMC came out, and Houdini came out, the album with 5 Minutes of Funk and Friends. They had an album before that, but those were the only acts that were consistently putting out albums, and those all 4 of them had big albums in 84. So 84 was really the year of the first year of having big rap albums that had an impact. And so I put, Kurtis Blow here first just because he, this was his fourth album. So, yeah, Basketball, AJ Scratch, and 8 Million Stories on this album. 3 classics. So, album 2, 1984 again, Run DMC. So this ended up being 53 on the Billboard Top 100 Pop and 14 in Hip Hop R&B album charts. So this is the first, so Run DMC's debut album was bigger than Kurtis Blow's Ego Trip, even though, Kurtis had hits on that. This was the first, rap album to blow up. And so Rock Box is on here as the third single, first rap video to be played on MTV Rock Box, mixed rock and rap. And it was a really groundbreaking song, and it probably laid the groundwork for Rick Rubin to, get Run DMC and Aerosmith together for the Walk This Way remix. So this album, inspired Public Enemy, the Beastie Boys, Linkin Park, Blink-182, Rage Against the Machine, and, Riotbox also made AMC's, they did a whole episode on this songs that shocked the world. Other big songs on Run DMC's debut album, Hard Times, that was a smash. Sucker MCs, that's a smash, and it's like that. So, I mean, all four of these songs received airplay. But freshman year in college and Rock Box, every Greek party, Ohio State, Rock Box was happening. So, yeah, so the Fat Boys also dropped in 84, and Houdini's album with, I was talking about 5 Minutes of Funk and Escape. So, banner year in 1984, where really rap albums kind of explode onto the scene. Album 3, Erykah B. and Rakim, Paid in Full, 1987. Again, this is the start. I don't know what songs they sampled. It was the start of the sampling era of hip hop, and really, and they call everything, mid '90s back classic rap, but this is really the start of in my opinion, of classic rap. This is because when I think of classic rap, I think of the sampling era, and Erykah B. and Rakim, to me, 1984, those folks, that's kind of like the founding era of rap to me. But, I separate those two. Obviously, most rap historians don't, but I think there's a clear, different things were happening in these two eras, and very different things. Rap was at a very different point in 84, and then because of Paid in Full and these albums in the late 80s, rap, and hip hop go to a different place quickly. So anyway, Paid in Full, 58 on the Billboard album chart, similar to what the Run DMC album did, and 8 on the Billboard R&B and hip hop chart. So still, we're not getting a number 1 in the black community, but this was named number 61 on the 2020 top 500 albums of all time. And of course, a lot of Gen Xers, talk about, the rapping style of Erykah B. and Rakim, and how, they brought a new style to the game with this album. Yeah, Paid in Full kind of solidified the East Coast rap scene, and it was kind of the measuring stick. And Rakim's relaxed rap delivery kind of was rooted in his love of jazz. So this was one of the first rap albums to use a lot of sampling. So what do we got here? Erykah B. is president, number 58, Billboard. I Know You Got Soul, 64. It Ain't No Joke, 38. So yeah, this album did very well, and it definitely a classic. So album 4, NWA, Straight Outta Compton, drops 1988. So I remember when this came out, everybody was like, "What the F? Like, you can say that?" It's just, it seems, there's music before Straight Outta Compton, there's music afterwards, and, the B word and N word weren't used, really. Richard Pryor used the N word, but, you don't hear that much in popular culture. And, in the mid 80s to the early 90s, there's a couple real cultural, works that kind of dropped and just changed the game. This is one of them. The other one was Pulp Fiction in 1994. Those are the two main ones. I remember when that everybody was talking about that, and it's like, you could do that. And I don't know why that's the one that broke for Tarantino, and it wasn't Reservoir Dogs. Because Reservoir Dogs is even more shocking than, but it wasn't. Reservoir Dogs was independent. Reservoir Dogs is even more shocking than Pulp Fiction. But I'm not sure people, were ready for Reservoir Dogs. But those are the two main things. And then, secondarily, we had 9.5 Weeks in 1990, 86, and then Basic Instinct in 1992. But, straight out, so we have in the span of, 6 years, Pulp Fiction, 8 years, where, these bombshells drop, and what you can do as an artist, what's mainstream changes. So Straight Outta Compton was dubbed gangster rap, and, we call it, G-Funk, very rooted in the funk sound, P-Funk and Sly Stone, whereas, I've said this before, the East Coast rap scene was more James Brownish, other than, the X-Clan, which also, sampled P-Funk heavily. So who benefited from this, from, this 86 to the 94, all these bombshells? Well, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, Eminem, the movie Superbad, the movie Bad Santa. I'm just doing this a couple days after Christmas 2023, and we were just talking about our favorite Christmas movies, and those are two of mine. But this album is, chock full of classic songs. Straight Outta Compton, Fuck the Police, Gangsta Gangster, Dope Man, 8 Ball, Express Yourself. Before this, they alluded to, subtly, you still had underground rap, who would, talk about, drugs and gang culture, but this is rooted in, and of course, gangster rap exploded, and, these kinds of things are still very strong and prominent in hip hop to this day. Number 5, De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising, 1989. So, this is sort of an alternative to East Coast rap. The regular East Coast rap scene was De La Soul's out in New York, and gangster rap. And so people have called this hippie rap, psychedelic flower power rap. It was very Afrocentric in many ways. Other groups similar to this, the Jungle Brothers, a Tribe Called Quest. But 3 Feet High and Rising was, a big hit, and of course it was just released in the last 6 months to streaming services, and back then they sampled stuff and didn't always get permission, and so there was a couple of samples that De La Soul couldn't get cleared, and so the songs are a little different than the originals, because I don't know what they did. I'm not sure what the samples were, but I still enjoy, 3 Feet High and Rising. But that's why it took so long for this album to hit the streaming services, is it took that long for De La Soul to get the samples cleared, and some of them folks weren't real happy that De La Soul sampled them and didn't ask them, one, and two, some of them I don't think they got paid what they think they should have gotten paid. But hey, De La Soul and a lot of artists were like, we're artists, we're going to create, this is a thing, this sampling thing. We'll figure out the money later. Well, later was many years, and the case for this album. So what? We got Me, Myself, and I was the smash on this. This is also a sample from P-Funk. Now, and Buddy was the smash off this. Now, interestingly enough, in the early 90s, a couple years later, George Clinton, P-Funk actually put out a CD called Sample a Little Bit of This and Sample a Little Bit of That. So he actually encouraged folks to sample his stuff. Part of that was probably because George didn't own his masters at the time. So if somebody else was using his stuff, it wasn't hitting him in the pocket because he wasn't seeing any of that money. So it was kind of, and George's, that's the trickster in George coming out. I'm like, okay, you're not going to pay me. Well, I will, encourage the hip hop community to, sample my stuff. And it didn't help George's street cred or hurt his street cred at all. I mean, the sampling, P-Funk along with James are probably the two most sampled, acts, in the sampling eras, and George did not discourage that at all. And again, why would he care? He wasn't, he wasn't getting any money, any royalties or anything. He didn't own his masters at the time. George didn't get, ownership of his masters until like the last 10 years. But anyway, this 3 Feet and High and Rising is ranked 103rd on the Rolling Stones top 500 albums of all time, and I believe that's the latest list, the reshuffle. They did this, in the early 2000s, and they came out about 3-4 years ago with a new one. So who was influenced by this? Erykah, Badu, Outkast, Kendrick Lamar, Ye. I mean, this is the first big experimental rap, hip hop, album and group. Number 6 on the list, the classic, The Chronic by Dre, 1992. I was watching, a documentary, Dre's life, and they did a very good job of kind of placing this and historically. And this is when rap kind of left the lab and found its legs. Rap kind of grew up with this album. Went from Child to maybe, with Run DMC and Houdini and the Fat Boys, and maybe a teenager with Paid in Full by Erykah and Rakim. But and I think, we kind of knew that this album was special when it dropped in 92. Like, oh, this ain't going nowhere. This is real. I mean, everybody thought hip hop was going to be a fad. It was just a fad and go away. Through as the 80s went on, we're like, no, I don't think this is going away. But I mean, this album had so much confidence to it, and just like, yeah, we ain't going into. This is the beginning of hip hop taking over the music industry. This planted that seed because the experimentation was over. The swagger was real with this album. It just felt different. So this album was in the Billboard Top 10 for 8 months. It ended up charting out at number 3 on the Billboard chart. Just a massive hit. I mean, everywhere you went, people were, playing, and this is, the beginning, a lot of white folks started getting, getting drawn in. I was at Purdue, when this dropped as undergrad, and even white folks, couldn't resist, the power of this G-Funk. So this album was done post Rodney King, the LA riots. It was very political in ways. But yeah, this album is a monster. It's a beast. Everybody likes to put things in Beatles terms and because they're kind of, well, look, they pretty much invented the modern album when an album should be. So, I mean, 3 Foot High and Rising, maybe that's, Sergeant Pepper, but this is the Chronic is Abbey Road. I mean, which is considered by most people, the Beatles, finest. Even though Sergeant Pepper was groundbreaking and experimental, but that's when they basically, okay, this is how albums are done. Abbey Road, it was, not experimental. It's like bam, So that's kind of, I think, where, the Chronic sits. And, I mean, the sexism and violence in the lyrics are there. It is what it is. I mean, it's continued to be there in hip hop. But, you take the good with the bad, and still love my hip hop. So in the 2005 top 500 albums of all time, the Chronic was 138, and then the remix of 2020 for Rolling Stone, the top 500, the Chronic's 37. So, and the big smash off this is Dre Day. There's plenty of others on here too, as we well know. Number 7, Arrested Development. 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days of the life of 1992. Man, 1992 was a big year. This is, obviously Arrested Development is alternative rap. If De La Soul was experimental, this is alternative. This is just a smash. I mean, this is, 1992 was a banner year for hip hop, to say the least, of really, chart wise and really pushing into the mainstream. So, a couple of the members are out of Milwaukee. So this is the first, album to drop, to explode. That's not, L.A., the Bay, or New York City. So 6 million copies of this album sold. So yeah, they were out of Milwaukee, but eventually they moved to Atlanta, and obviously Atlanta, soon after becomes a hotbed for hip hop as well. But this is significant at number 7, Arrested Development, for the non-East Coast to West Coast location of the band, and a different sound and a different perspective. Again, very Afrocentric as well. The politics of this album are there. It's not, a lot of it's internal and dealing with how blacks deal with each other, but obviously there's some, the external politics are present as well. So the two big songs on this, People Every Day in Tennessee, and then Mr. Wendell was also kind of a big one as well. Album number 8. Wu-Tang Clan, Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, 1993. Man, this was a smash. To me, this is where hip-hop truly forms. Hip-hop was a term thrown around, but rap becomes hip-hop. And the difference, when I say the difference between rap and hip-hop is rap is music. Hip-hop was forming, the fashion, Basquiat, as a visual artist. You had visual artists doing hip-hop, rap inspired, under the banner of hip-hop. But as a culture, as a way of life, this is the first time where, I saw, I was still at Purdue as an undergrad, and folks were just kind of like, yeah, we doing our own thing. It became a worldview. This is where, where hip hop starts becoming a worldview, a way of seeing your life, and a way of, which is bigger than music. And that's why, Gen X loves them some Wu-Tang. I was older at this time, and I was like, wait, what? A way of life, a lifestyle? Nah, I think So I never got into the hip hop way. I mean, I understand, and I saw it emerge, but right time, right place, Wu-Tang, and this is a classic album. So the big songs off of this, Cream, obviously, and Protect Your Neck. Yeah. But this is, it cannot be, hip hop today, Dre Day was, growing up, hey, I mean, lack of a better term, Wu-Tang, that's like, okay, we black business owners now, literally, we're doing it the world, we're doing it our way, we're doing, literally doing things for ourselves. It wasn't talk anymore. And the whole idea of hip hop being our way, our view of the world, it just coincides out of Wu-Tang, and that's why they're so revered, with Black Gen Xers. But yeah, this is a monumental album. Now keep in mind, when I, play certain trends in hip hop and rap, I'm not. I'm coming out of not living in, California, New York City. So if you're from New York City, like, man, what's he talking about? This is going on way sooner. That's, I mean, y'all were, California and New York were the epicenter and so, yeah, they were going to get things, faster and, the idea of hip hop, took form earlier. I mean, Africa Bambaataa had this thing, and it was, it was hip hopish, in the early '80s, but it did not leave New York City. And but hip hop became like the Rastafarian and how they see the world in some ways after, Wu-Tang. So, number 7 album, Mary J. Blige, My Life, 1994. So, Mary J. Blige is the queen of hip hop. Now, why was this important? Because this is the first rap album, R&B for lack of a better term, even though hip hop soul. You had to kind of, if you wanted to hit the top 40, the pop chart, you kind of had to, tone down your blackness. And I put this, this in here at number 7, why it's important, because Mary J. she wasn't toning down nothing. This album was raw. This album, the the real stank blues, not the slick back blues. This was a Motown that Mary J is doing. This is Stax. She ain't pulling no punches. And this was a very, successful album. And this is the first R&B album to be this successful without trying to be commercial. The hits off of this, Be Happy, My Life, I'm Going Down, You Bring Me Joy. So My Life by Mary J. Blige was huge. It ended up hitting number 7 in the Billboard pop charts. But as I said, Mary J. was not trying to be Michael Jackson or Prince. I love my Prince and I have mad respect for Michael Jackson, but she wasn't going that route. And this is the first R&B album, that took, I did an episode on my funk channel, sub channel, not different channel, but sub channel. I did No Parking on the Dance Floor by Midnight Star, which was, really rooted in the funk. And, I was like, heck, if they would have put that album out, here in 1994, the album would have been a smash because it had, hooks. It was very well written, but it just came out at the wrong time. So it's a major shift in taste and culturally where, because, raw, unvarnished, black life that Mary J was talking about, went mainstream. Number 8. Erykah Badu, Baduizm. So this sits in, as I said, Mary J. Erykah Badu sits in all of the great musical traditions, jazz. She often uses that, a jazz beat, hip hop, R&B, soul, and the blues. I mean, she sounds like Billie Holiday. But this also kind of coincides when, it started off with Arrested Development, but when, hip hop went global. or went nationwide. So it's no longer a California, New York City thing. She's out of Dallas, but, is connected there in Atlanta too. And everybody starts, starts eating, everywhere, So, obviously Atlanta, but you got the dirty South sound coming up after this. You got New Orleans, popping up and then doing their hip hop. So, Erykah Badu is just kind of symbolic for me of everybody getting into the hip hop game and having a voice. And, the hip hop heads, this is another jaw dropper for even the hip hop heads. I was still at Purdue when Baduizm dropped in graduate school, and yeah, this is another one of those cultural moments, but really only for the black community. Yeah, so the big ones songs on here were On and Apple Tree. So the final two albums on the drop here, I've been going sequentially up until now for 9 and 10, but want to shine a light. I mentioned one of these groups back with a De La Soul 3 Feet High and Rising, because one of the reasons why I think hip hop is going so strong and will continue to go so strong is it's a sponge. It takes from so many different genres. It's funny because sometimes black folks get, they talk about cultural appropriation and stuff, but hip hop takes everybody's stuff and kind of spits it back out, in the black form. I mean, even Wu-Tang, was, influenced by, the karate movies of the 70s coming out of Japan and China and Bruce Lee and that stuff. So it's ironic, but hip hop takes everything in, and in some ways, even though the black fans of hip hop may not be as generous, hip hop is very generous. I mean, there's the rap rock of the 90s, and the combination of Rage Against the Machine of punk and rap, and then but now, I mean, you look at Travis Scott and you see his live shows, and he's taken from punk acts, going back, to late 80s and early 90s, back when punk was punk, and, now we have pop punk. But so, hip hop, draws everything in. It's like a sponge, and, I don't see, of course, sitting in the 80s, I could never see where classic rock could be irrelevant. But I think, hip hop will, I mean, you can go right now, even if you're like, oh, the hip hop, is boring and yada, yada, yada. Well, the stuff on the radio is, but, you still got, you still got, Kendrick Lamar and Tyler the Creator and folks like that doing very interesting things. If you go to the alternative rap playlists, they got a couple curated by, Spotify. They're very interesting stuff. You got rap punk doing very interesting stuff. And so hip hop is always taking in different things and being experimental. So my last two albums are in that vein and really laid the groundwork for that. So one of my all-time favorites, only had two albums, Digable Planets, Reachin, a new Refutation of Time and Space from 1993. The follow-up album was Blowout Comb. So only two albums. And the first album here, this was 1993. Rebirth of Slick, Cool Like That. So I mean, that's the smash off this album. They took jazz and really did a beautiful marriage between jazz and hip hop. And even though a lot of folks haven't followed up on that, it set the bar, and they're there with De La Soul and really being experimental. Um, so Digable Planets was formed at Howard. The members, were from, none of them were from New York or California, and then they, moved to Brooklyn, and hey, they were just on the 50th anniversary for hip hop, so, and they got, people got really hyped for Cool Like That. And my final band is a Tribe Called Quest, and these guys influenced, Outcast, you can see, elements of them, with Ye, and even, Kendrick Lamar is kind of taken what they and De La Soul did and kind of run with it, and it really did his own thing with it. But, so and the big album from, A Tribe Called Quest was the Low End Theory from 1991. So I wanted at the end here to shine a light on the experimental factor, that still is going very strong in hip hop, and I don't think ever will, because hip hop's gonna, they're even, hip hop acts and, incorporating, reggaeton. So, and I remember, Lil Jon, in the, 15 years ago was doing EDM into his rap. So there, folks are, hip hop artists are always trying new things, something new jumps off. They're gonna, take it, dissect it, and, incorporate it somehow, some way into hip hop. So those are my 10 albums. I would be remiss if I did not talk about the two biggest albums of this era. We're talking 84 to 98, so 14 year, which I call the classic era. Part of that's the classic era, and then I call it the Founders era. But, MC Hammer, Please Hammer Don't Hurt in 1990. It was a huge smash. It crossed over. I'm pretty sure the album hit number one. But it was pop rap, and Hammer got a lot of flack for selling out, yada, yada, yada. But, gotta acknowledge that now, what that meant to, who that influenced, what that meant going forward, I don't know, but that album kicked a lot of doors open. I don't, commercial success, I don't know, I don't know as far as the influencing other artists, but I gotta mention, Hammer, and I ain't mad at him. He got paid. He paved, you like it or not. Folks call him a sellout back then. It's interesting. Kiss went through the same thing in the late 70s when they, started merchandising. But, and everybody was, black folks, black Gen Xers were criticizing MC Hammer for, doing commercials and, doing the corporate stuff, but heck, everybody's doing that now, everybody's gone corporate. Look, Beats by Dre, come on, but Hammer kicked the door down, he paved a lot of streets for people, and showed the way. He was, come on, what Jay-Z's doing now as a businessman and, worth $3 billion plus. MC Hammer had the blueprint for all that. And I also have to DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. He's the DJ and I'm the rapper, 1988. Another huge album. Did well on the charts. Again, kicked the door open, and then Will Smith went to Hollywood, did very well for himself. And, I talked about branding gone bad and, what happened with him and Chris Rock. But hey, a couple of weeks ago, they did the Grammys, the 50th celebration of hip hop, and who closed the show? Hip hop. It was Will Smith. and every single act I just talked about was on that stage, and Will closed the show, and they wanted, to give the boy, my boy a hand. I mean, it's complicated what went down with them and Chris Rock, and respect them both as artists. So I dealt with that in another episode, and hopefully, I hope they both continue to thrive and are successful. I'm not, it's unfortunate what happened, but, Will Smith had the respect of his peers from this time in hip hop, and they, he closed the show. So, so those are my 10. Hope you like it. And thanks for coming through. And I'll be doing some more top 10. I'll be bouncing all over the place, like, and this line, and this sub, line heading of the channel. So appreciate you coming through. I got 5 albums of my own here on YouTube and on all the streaming services under the name Exodus. I got 2 science fiction fantasy novels and a novella on Amazon. So thank you again, and see you next episode.